There comes a moment in every human being's life when they realize, in an almost brutal way, that the world will not slow down to wait for them to discover who they really are. Life does not provide ready-made maps. It does not offer shortcuts. It does not hold your hand. Life simply happens, and in the midst of this whirlwind, you must decide whether you will be dragged by the current or finally take the position of commander of your own existence. Many spend their entire lives trying to change what is outside, without realizing that the only key that truly transforms destinies is inside the mind. That is why every journey begins with a simple, yet definitive sentence: wealth begins in the mind. And if it begins in the mind, then your entire life is a direct reflection of what you think, what you believe, and what you tolerate. Napoleon Hill said that thoughts are things, and to many that phrase seems too poetic, too metaphorical, too abstract. But think of the moment when Thomas Edison decided, against all failures, against all criticism, against all consecutive setbacks, that he would create the light bulb. The light bulb was not born first in the laboratory, it was born in the mind. Andrew Carnegie did not build empires with steel before building them in imagination. Disney did not erect castles before erecting them in vision. They turned thought into matter, idea into world, will into reality. And if that seems too grand, too distant, remember, they all started exactly where you are now, in the inner silence that precedes a decision, the decision to think differently. Because there is a breaking point between who you are and who you can become. And this point reveals itself when you understand that your mind is not a victim of circumstances, but the engine that can bend them. But for that, you must look inward with the sincerity that few have the courage to sustain. You must ask yourself, what thoughts have I been feeding daily? What beliefs have I been carrying as chains? How many times have I allowed doubts, fears, others' opinions, and past failures to define my future? The truth is that many want to change their lives, but few are willing to change the mind that created the life they have today. And while the mind does not change, nothing changes. You can change jobs, cities, relationships, projects, but you will carry with you the same mindset that sabotages, that fears, that hesitates, that procrastinates, that gives up. And when that happens, life becomes a mirror of the same results, repeated in different scenarios. But what happens when you decide to break this cycle? When you decide to reprogram your destiny? When you decide that the mind will no longer be a prison, but a tool? That is where true transformation begins, because you begin to realize that beliefs are not absolute truths, they are habits of thought. And any habit can be replaced, shaped, rewritten. Change begins with belief, not blind, naive, superficial belief, but disciplined, constructed belief, the belief that becomes muscle, the belief that strengthens with repetition, with action, with vision. A belief so solid that nothing external can knock it down. Henry Ford understood this like few others. When he was told that something was impossible, he did not see impossibility, he saw an opinion. And opinions do not create reality, conviction does. Ford believed in what did not yet exist, and that is why he created what no one imagined. But to believe in what does not yet exist, you must learn to see the invisible. You must develop clarity. Clarity of purpose, clarity of direction, clarity of identity. Clarity is not just knowing what you want, it is knowing what you will no longer accept. It is eliminating the noise, the excess, the distraction. It is aligning thought with intention, intention with action, and action with the destiny you have chosen. This clarity is like lighting a bonfire in the middle of the night. Everything changes. Suddenly you realize that what once seemed impossible was merely unknown, and the unknown ceases to be a threat when you enter it with vision. When Walt Disney walked through the swamps that would later become the world's largest entertainment complex, he did not see mud. He saw the future. He saw smiles. He saw magic. He saw something no one else saw. That is clarity, not a clarity based on what exists, but on what can exist. A clarity born from disciplined imagination. And when imagination meets purpose, the world yields. Purpose is the invisible force that moves the great, that sustains the spirit when the body wants to give up, that rekindles the flame even on the coldest nights. Purpose is what turns effort into meaning, sacrifice into construction, pain into growth. Without purpose, life becomes a burden. With purpose, life becomes a mission. But mission demands discipline, and discipline is the element that separates the dreamer from the achiever. Everyone dreams, everyone desires, everyone imagines. But few act with consistency. Discipline is waking up when the body prefers to stay in bed. It is working when no one is watching. It is training the mind to do what is necessary, not just what is comfortable. It is maintaining direction even when the path gets dark. It is saying, I will, when the world expects you to say, I can't. Edison did not invent the light bulb because he was lucky. He invented it because he had discipline. He did not fail 1,000 times, he learned 1,000 ways not to give up. Discipline turns attempt into mastery. And when you start to act with discipline, a new element emerges: deliberate action. The action born from clear intention, solid belief, and unshakable purpose. The action that moves mountains. The action that turns doubt into proof. The action that creates results. Because the universe responds to action, it responds to movement, it responds to commitment. Luck favors those who advance. But while you build, there is another power that strengthens your journey: gratitude. Not romantic gratitude, but strategic gratitude. The gratitude that recognizes that every challenge is a teacher, that every failure contains a seed of opportunity, that every fall strengthens the mind for the next leap. Gratitude transforms chaos into fuel. It changes your internal state, and when your internal state changes, everything around you begins to adjust. Gratitude is not about accepting less, it is about elevating your vibration while you work to conquer more. And inevitably, the journey will demand adaptability, because the world changes, the market changes, people change, circumstances change. But those who know how to adapt never lose the game. Carnegie knew this by turning crises into opportunities. Lincoln knew this by turning political defeats into experience. Adaptability is emotional intelligence in motion. It is flexible strength. It is rigidity only in purpose, not in methods. And as you adapt, you grow. And as you grow, you face what all the greats have faced: resistance, criticism, doubt, loneliness. But it is exactly in these moments that resilience will determine who continues and who stops. Resilience is choosing to remain when others collapse. It is transforming pressure into power. It is keeping your heart firm when the world seems to be crumbling. It is listening to the echo of your own conviction when the external silence tries to convince you that you won't make it. And in the end, when you look back, you realize that it all started in the mind. That your mind rewrote your story, that your thoughts paved the way, that your belief broke boundaries, that your discipline built the pillars, that your vision guided your step, that your purpose gave it meaning, that your adaptability opened doors, that your resilience made you weather storms. And then you understand wealth is not just financial. Wealth is evolution. Wealth is freedom. Wealth is consciousness. Wealth is responsibility. Wealth is you becoming greater than you were yesterday. The human mind is too vast a territory to be treated as a spectator of its own life. It is the command center, the silent engine, the creative force behind everything you achieve and everything you avoid achieving. When you awaken to this, you begin to realize that every recurring thought shapes your behavior, and every repeated behavior shapes your destiny. That is why, when you decide to reprogram your mind, you are not just changing ideas, you are changing your entire future. You are redesigning the script of your own history. You are opening doors you couldn't even see before. But reprogramming the mind is not a passive process. It is not simple, and it is never comfortable. The old mind will resist. It will remind you of the falls, the fears, the negative opinions you heard, the times you tried and it didn't work out. It will try to protect you, but in doing so, it will try to limit you. Because the traditional mind was shaped by the past, and the past cannot be the architect of your future. You must take the lead. You must build new internal images. You must repeat to yourself daily, like a strategically placed mantra, that you are capable, that you are disciplined, that you are resilient, that you are greater than any imposed limitation. The mind believes what is reinforced. So reinforce greatness, and this is exactly where many stumble. They want to change their lives, but they continue to feed thoughts that contradict their goals. They want wealth, but they feed scarcity. They want success, but they focus on problems. They want evolution, but they focus on mistakes. They want to grow, but they maintain the internal dialogue of self-sabotage that says, subtly but daily, that they are not enough. The universe responds to what you vibrate, not to what you desire. It responds to your dominant energy, not your momentary requests. Therefore, reprogramming your destiny begins with reprogramming the energy pattern you emit. And this energy is shaped by your expectations. Expectations are internal prophecies. If you expect failure, your mind automatically directs your actions to confirm it. If you expect difficulty, you turn every step into a battle. But when you expect progress, your mind begins to seek paths. It begins to identify opportunities. It begins to see possibilities where before there was only fear. Hill said that you attract what becomes dominant in your mind, and modern science only confirms this. Your brain filters reality based on what you consider important. So, if you want to change your life, you need to change what you consider important. You need to train your brain to detect doors and not walls. And when you start to see these doors, something powerful happens. Decisions that once seemed impossible emerge. Because decisions shape destinies. Decisions break cycles. Decisions rewrite the future. But the decisions that transform are not made when you are comfortable. They are made when you are tired, pressured, challenged. When life pushes you and you decide to push back. When the world tries to diminish you and you choose to elevate yourself. When you look at difficulty and decide that it will not be greater than your intention. Great destinies are built in moments of tension, not comfort. And yet, a decision without action is just a beautiful thought. Therefore, every decision must be accompanied by movement. One step, no matter how small, triggers a powerful internal reaction. Movement creates motivation. Movement creates clarity. Movement creates strength. Many people wait to be motivated to act, but this is a fundamental mistake. Motivation does not precede action. It is generated by action. Edison did not wait for the perfect inspiration before starting his experiments. It was in the middle of the process that genius revealed itself. You need to move. You need to act even when you don't know exactly what the outcome will be. Because action opens paths that the mind could never predict while standing still. And when action becomes constant, what many call self-confidence is born, but Hill called applied faith. Faith is not believing that everything will be easy. It is believing that you will be capable. It is trusting in your own ability to overcome challenges. It is building such a solid internal relationship with yourself that there is no longer any doubt about your strength. Applied faith is what you reinforce with every small victory, every promise kept, every night you choose to work a little more, learn a little more, evolve a little more. Applied faith turns the mind into an ally, and this internal alliance opens space for something even deeper: vision. Vision is the internal film you project daily. It is the clear image of who you want to be, not just what you want to have. That is a consequence. Solid vision is about identity. Who do you wish to become? The answer to that question defines everything. Because when your future identity becomes clear, your actions begin to align automatically. The mind works to bring who you are today closer to who you decided to be tomorrow. And when that happens, a new mental pattern emerges. You stop acting on the impulse of the moment and start acting by the direction of the future. But vision without discipline crumbles. Discipline is the bridge between what you imagine and what you build. It is getting up when the body is weak. It is training when everyone is resting. It is continuing when no one is congratulating you. It is maintaining focus when the world offers infinite distraction. It is saying no to what compromises your greatness. Discipline is self-love applied to the future. And no one, absolutely no one who changed the world did it without fierce discipline. Edison, Disney, Carnegie, Ford, they were all men of vision, but before that they were men of daily discipline. They were men who understood that destiny is shaped by small, constant decisions, not by occasional bursts of motivation. And with discipline, something many ignore emerges: emotional consistency. Because it's no use acting only when you're inspired. It's no use working only on good days. The world belongs to those who remain constant, to those who deliver even when they don't want to those who continue even when they are tired. The greatest victories of your life will not come from enthusiasm. They will come from consistency. They will come from the ability to remain faithful to the process while the result is still invisible. This requires mental maturity. This requires internal strength. This requires the ability to control your emotional state, not to be controlled by it. And when you develop that control, when you master the mind instead of being mastered by it, you discover an internal power that most people will never touch. You discover that you don't need to wait for motivation. You don't need to wait for perfect conditions. You don't need to wait for approval. You become the kind of person who creates movement, who creates opportunity, who creates results. You become cause, not consequence. And in this state of elevated consciousness, the ability to transform obstacles into energy arises. What once limited you now becomes fuel. What once frustrated you now strengthens you. What once knocked you down now prepares you. This internal transformation is the core of true wealth, because it does not depend on the external world. It is born from how you interpret reality. Lincoln lost countless elections before becoming president. Ford went bankrupt before creating the industry we know. Disney was rejected by banks that said he didn't have enough imagination. They all suffered falls, but none interpreted the fall as the end. They interpreted it as a beginning. They transformed pain into direction. And as this strengthened mind grows, something inevitable emerges: responsibility. Responsibility for your own life, responsibility for your own results, responsibility for everything you create and for everything you allow. Mental wealth is this: understanding that you are the architect of your own destiny, that no one is coming to save you, that no one is coming to do it for you, that life changes when you change, that the world responds when you transform. Responsibility is the first sign of mental maturity. When you take full responsibility for what you experience, not blame, responsibility. Something extraordinary happens, you regain control. While you blame the world, the circumstances, the past, the people, you give away your power. But when you tell yourself, I am responsible for transforming this, the mind awakens. It understands that there is no more room for victimhood, for passivity, for the internal narrative that keeps you small. Responsibility gives you back the steering wheel. And when you are at the wheel, you begin to shape the route. The route, however, is not linear, no grand journey is. The illusion that the path will be straight is what destroys many before they even begin. But those who understand that the curve is part of it, that the detour teaches, that the obstacle matures, these ones grow. They grow not in spite of the challenges, but because of them. Andrew Carnegie faced devastating economic crisis. Edison faced countless failures. Lincoln faced internal and external wars. Ford faced bankruptcies. And you will face your own battles, not to be defeated, but to be shaped. The fire burns away weakness, but strengthens steel. And this is where what many ignore comes in: continuous learning. The mind that grows is the mind that prospers. Success is not an endpoint. It is a movement. It is a constant expansion. It is an infinite search for evolution. Those who achieve much learn incessantly. They study, observe, absorb, question themselves, refine. They know that the mind is the most valuable asset. The body ages, the world changes, money fluctuates, but a strong mind, a trained mind remains. It remains lucid, it remains capable, it remains rich. And when the mind becomes rich, it develops a rare power, the ability to visualize the future and behave as if it were now. This is the essence of the law of attraction through the lens of Napoleon Hill: not to wish and wait, but to imagine and act, to visualize and apply, to feel and build. It is not about positive thinking. It is about thinking strategically. It is about creating intentions, aligning emotions, and reinforcing behaviors. The mind projects, the body executes, destiny responds. And while this internal construction happens, you begin to perceive something profound. Life has always been giving clues. There have always been signs, always opportunities, always paths. But the unprepared mind does not see what it is not ready to recognize. When you reprogram your mind, you recalibrate your internal radar. And suddenly, what once seemed like coincidence begins to seem like synchronicity. The world seems to open doors, but the doors were always there. The difference now is that your mind can see them. And when you start to see doors, the need for courage arises. Because seeing doors does not transform your life. Entering them does. Many people stop at the door. They know what they want. They know what they need to do. They know it's possible, but they don't cross. They get stuck in the limbo between desire and action, in the space where dreams die. But courage is crossing even with fear. Courage is acting even without a guarantee. Courage is moving while the path is still dark. Courage is saying, I trust myself. And when courage meets preparation, destiny realigned, however, demands an element that few master: internal silence. In a world full of voices, opinions, criticisms, comparisons, it is easy to get lost in the echo of others. But the strong mind knows how to silence the noise to hear its own conviction. Edison ignored critics. Disney ignored rejections. Ford ignored skeptics. Lincoln ignored ridicule. They all had something in common. Their internal conviction was louder than the external noise. And that conviction is not born by chance, it is born by choice. When you choose to strengthen your mind daily, everything in you elevates. Your standards elevate, your actions elevate, your expectations elevate, and the world around you responds to this new standard. Different people start to appear. Different opportunities start to appear. Different challenges start to reveal themselves. Greater challenges because you have become greater. And instead of being frightened by the weight of greatness, you begin to desire it. You begin to realize that you were born for this. That mediocrity was always too small for your soul. And it is here that wealth, true wealth, begins to manifest. Because wealth is not just about conquering, it is about becoming. It is about developing a mind that thinks with abundance, with vision, with purpose. A mind that does not fear scarcity because it knows how to produce value. A mind that does not fear failure because it knows how to turn a fall into direction. A mind that does not fear the unknown because it knows how to attack the unknown with imagination and discipline. And this rich mind awakens something fundamental: the ability to lead your own life. Leading is not about controlling everything, it is about controlling yourself. It is directing energy. It is mastering impulses. It is choosing the response instead of reacting to the stimulus. It is creating internal balance amid external chaos. It is knowing where you are going even when the winds change. And when you lead yourself, you naturally become someone who inspires. Not because you try to seem strong, but because you truly are. Not because you fake confidence, but because you built it. Not because you want recognition, but because your character generates impact. People with reprogrammed minds don't need to prove anything. Their very lives prove it. But to sustain this elevated state, there is something many forget: emotional energy. It is what fuels action, what sustains discipline. It is what moves vision. A powerful mind only remains powerful if nourished by balanced emotions. Therefore, you must learn to transform fear into focus, anxiety into movement, frustration into direction. Emotions are not enemies, they are fuel. The difference lies in who is driving. And when you master this fuel, something extraordinary happens. You become unstoppable. Not because you don't fall anymore, you do. Not because you don't feel pain anymore, you do. Not because you don't get tired, you do. But because none of that detains you. Your mind has been conditioned to advance, to persist, to learn, to grow. You no longer fight against the world, you build with the world. You no longer wait to be saved, you save yourself. You no longer fear the future, you write it. And then, in an almost silent moment, you realize that life has changed. Not because something magical happened, but because you changed. You became someone who thinks differently, acts differently, vibrates differently. And life, as a reflection of your mind, merely followed. And it is at this point that you begin to understand the truth that was always hidden in plain sight. Destiny is not found, it is programmed. There is no line written in stone, no predetermined script, no path impossible to remake. Destiny is plastic, destiny is malleable. Destiny responds to the force of the mind that molds it. The weak are molded by destiny, the strong mold destiny. And this distinction begins on the inside, always on the inside, long before any external change is visible. Because before you conquer anything in the physical world, you must conquer it within yourself. Conquer your doubts. Conquer your habits. Conquer your internal dialogue. Conquer your tendencies to procrastinate. Conquer your old identity that insists on pulling you back to the familiar zone. The most difficult battle you will fight in life is not against other people. It is against the version of you that wants to remain the same. This version fears change, fears risk, fears greatness. It creates excuses, it invents justifications, it dramatizes obstacles. It seduces you with comfort. And you must learn to recognize it. You must learn to confront it. You must learn to overcome it daily. This internal battle is not a quick war, it is a long war. But it is a war worth every inch conquered. Because each time you defeat that old version, you get closer to the grand version that is trying to emerge. And this version, the future version, the elevated version, does not negotiate with mediocrity. It does not accept less than excellence. It does not tolerate behaviors that diminish its own greatness. It does not run from challenges, it seeks them, because it knows that within them lies the opportunity for expansion. And when this version begins to emerge, you feel a profound change. A silent change, but a clear one. A change that alters the way you walk, talk, think, react. You stop being someone who lives on autopilot and become someone who lives with intention. Every action gains purpose. Every word carries weight. Every decision becomes strategic. You free yourself from disordered movement and start to act with direction. This is mental evolution. This is reprogramming. It is what Napoleon Hill called moving with a definite purpose. And having a definite purpose is like carrying fire in your heart. It is a force that does not go out. It is an energy that does not depend on circumstances. It is a vibration that pushes you forward even when everything seems unfavorable. Purpose is the axis that keeps you firm on turbulent days. It is the meaning behind the effort. It is the reason why you continue even when no one understands why. Purpose turns the journey into a mission, and a mission is impossible to ignore. But purpose without direction gets lost. Purpose without discipline weakens. That is why you must combine clarity with focus. Focus is what prevents your energy from being drained by distractions. Focus is what turns effort into conquest. Focus is what prevents you from being seduced by easier paths that lead to empty places. In a world where everyone is busy, focus is what differentiates those who produce from those who merely move. Focus creates depth, it creates consistency. It creates impact, and when you build impact, what few understand but all feel naturally emerges: internal authority. Not authority in the sense of superiority, but of alignment. Internal authority is when your actions confirm your words, when you respect yourself because you keep the promises you make to yourself. It is when your mind learns that it can trust you. This internal trust is the foundation of true self-confidence. Not the fragile kind based on appearance and external validation, but the deep kind based on integrity with oneself. This self-confidence creates posture, it creates presence, it creates magnetism. You don't force anything, you attract. You don't beg for opportunities, you create them. You don't chase after doors, you make doors open. And when life starts to respond in this way, many will say you were lucky. But luck is just the name the inattentive give to the result of discipline added to vision. And with time, you begin to notice something even more special. You haven't just changed your mind, you have changed your identity. And when identity changes, everything changes. Your choices transform, your habits realign, your relationships refine, your energy changes, your voice changes, your rhythm changes. You become someone you would have admired one day. And this feeling of daily approaching the best version of yourself is the purest form of wealth. Because wealth is not just what you accumulate, it is what you become. And as you become this new version, you develop a silent power, the power of self-direction. The ability to define your destiny without needing the world to applaud you, without needing circumstances to be perfect, without needing someone to give you permission. You become the architect, the strategist, the commander. And when someone tries to limit you, you do not diminish yourself, you expand, because you understand that no one has the authority to define what you are capable of achieving. But expansion requires continuous courage. It requires leaving behind environments, people, habits, and beliefs that kept you stuck. It requires letting go of what is good to achieve what is extraordinary. It requires trading today's comfort for tomorrow's conquest. It requires transforming pain into discipline, doubt into determination, fear into movement. It requires the courage to let the old version die so that the new one can be born. And the more you advance, the more you realize that everything that seemed impossible was just a mental limitation, that the walls that surrounded you were made of paper, that the chains that held you were illusions, that life always started within, never without, that the external world is merely the mirror of the internal mind. And then the moment arises when you understand deeply that you are, in fact, reprogramming your destiny, not by magic, not by chance, but by choice, by intention, by discipline, by vision, by conviction, by the absolute power of a trained mind. And when this understanding settles within you, something grand happens. You realize you can go even further.